welcome back to This Homemade Life. If you're new, my name is Courtney and it's time for another What's for Dinner video. So this week definitely comes with a story. If you watch all of my videos, you know that for Easter I was supposed to be making a brisket for our family Easter get together, which I did. So I got up Sunday morning. I typically cook my brisket in the oven overnight, which is what I was doing. I put it in Saturday night, like 11 o'clock before I went to bed, 200, 230, I can't even remember now. Left it cooking all night long. I get up in the morning, Sunday morning, I'm getting dressed, I'm getting ready. About 10 o'clock, I go to pull it out of the oven. It's not cooked. It's still, it started cooking, but it was not cooked. It's an hour drive to get to my in-laws' house, so I really didn't have a lot of time to play with at that point. What I ended up doing was just popping it back in the oven, low and slow, and we went to Dickey's and got brisket there to take to our family function. So we had brisket waiting for us at home. That actually worked out well. That means none of the meal plan I told you guys about on the previous grocery day, none of that happened really. We had brisket. We had brisket a couple of different ways, but what I did do was use brisket in ways I have never used it before. So it was actually pretty cool. We found some things that we really, really enjoyed, and there were tons of leftovers. The other thing that happened was my husband ended up going out of town for work, so I didn't want to cook things that he just loves if he's not going to be here. So I ended up making some things that my son and I enjoy quite a bit, my oldest son Xander. Just things that we really like that my husband does not. He'll be back by the time you guys are watching this. He's not back when I'm filming this, but he will be back when you see this. Anyway, we enjoyed a number of meals that he does not like. So this week's meal plan was definitely not what I planned, but it definitely worked out. I mean, I was thrilled with what we did with the brisket, as was everyone else in my family. That brisket hash, that's one of the first recipes. I think it's like the second one maybe. First, I'll show you how to make the brisket, but oh my gosh, that hash was so delicious. I would make brisket again just to make that. It was fantastic. The bread, the homemade Amish bread was to die for. I was unprepared for it making 2 loaves. I only owned 1 loaf pan at the time, so I did try a braided bread with it. While it looked pretty cool, I didn't like the way it turned out. The bottom did overcook, but the loaf of bread, wow. We loved that. You will definitely see that again on my channel. I'm kind of playing around with breads right now, making different things, seeing what we like. It's one of the things I can make a lot cheaper at home than I can buy in the store, and with rising costs right now, if there's something that really is that simple for me to make, it only takes a few minutes to mix in the mixer, and then it rises on its own. It doesn't need me, and it bakes, and it really doesn't need me. I'm going to continue kind of toying around with that. Anyway, that is enough chatting. Let's go ahead and see what it is we had for dinner. All right, guys, so I'm going to start this video off showing you how I make a brisket. Despite the cooking time fail, this was absolutely fantastic. We ate every last bite of it. It was tender and juicy and delicious. Now, this is smaller than a lot of the briskets I have cooked in the past, so I didn't expect it to take as long as it did, in all fairness. I think my temperature, or my oven, is not coming up to the proper temperature. Anyway, I like to use a foil pan for easy cleanup and things like that. There will be a lot of trimmings and juice at the end. I do not trim the fat off of my brisket prior to cooking it. I think that is what helps it get so tender and fall apart and all that kind of stuff. So leave the fat on, we'll take care of it later. I do poke some holes in the top, and then I am a huge fan of this Claude's brisket marinade. It tastes so, so, so delicious. So I just pour that over the top of my brisket, fat side up, and then I'm going to cover it with foil and let it hang out in my fridge until I'm ready to cook it. If you're going to cook this at home, let it marinate for no less than 24 hours, but I highly recommend 48. Before you bake it in the oven or put it on your smoker, whichever route you decide to go, make sure you drain about half of that marinade off and then leave the rest of it in there. And it just really gives you a delicious brisket. And there it is. Once I had cooked it again while we were gone all day, I put it back in and dropped it down to like 170 because we were going to be out of the house, and it was fantastic. Anyway, we were having brisket for lunch for dinner the next day because I had a whole brisket. So I decided I was going to try a new recipe. This is an Amish bread recipe. So my entire family absolutely adored this recipe. It was so, so good.
It does call for a lot of sugar compared to what we normally see in bread recipes, but just go with it. It's so delicious. It's not as sweet as like Hawaiian bread, I guess, but it's close for sure. I don't know that I'd want to make a whole bunch of sandwiches out of it, maybe peanut butter, maybe ham, but serving it on the side of dinner and things like that, maybe French toast, breakfast toast in the morning, it's going to be phenomenal. It's the texture too, though. The texture of this bread is so pillowy soft. It's amazing. It kind of reminded me of like an angel food cake. It was so soft. I was really impressed by it. So I will link the recipe below in the description box for you guys. Just fair warning, it does make 2 loaves of bread. I only owned a 1 loaf pan, so you'll see me make a little braided bread thing later that, I mean, it worked out okay, but I wouldn't do it again. The recipe does say that you should add your flour while the mixer's going, which I started off doing, and it just created like a flour storm around my kitchen. So I stopped doing that and I started turning the machine off and added it, which still resulted in flour flying everywhere. It was a little bit messy, but that's okay. The dough is also very sticky. I was actually a little bit nervous by how sticky it was, but I didn't want to add more flour because I had already added the absolute maximum the recipe called for. So I decided I would just let it rise, and if it was still super sticky, I would add more flour later when I was kneading it, and it turned out fine. Now, it does say for you to put the dough in an oiled bowl after you've let your machine knead it or you've hand kneaded it, whichever route you're taking. I am totally not in the mood to hand knead this early in the morning, so I was just letting my machine do all the work for me. I did start this pretty early while we were doing homeschool. That way, if it was a fail, I could figure something else out to go with dinner. But it actually turned out fantastic. So I just oiled a bowl with a little bit of olive oil, and then the recipe said to also make sure the top of the dough was oiled, which I did, and I'm glad I did because it rose way more than I thought it would. And I covered it with some Glad press and seal, which, oh my gosh, I love that stuff because cling wrap is a nightmare for me. I can never get it to stick to things except for the roll, and it tears and it just falls apart. I mean, I have the worst time with cling wrap. That press and seal is so easy. Anyway, I just kind of set this off to the side for a couple of hours and forgot about it actually because I had other things going on. When I came back, it had like beyond doubled in size probably. And I decided to work with it on some parchment paper because this was so messy when I put it in the bowl. I was afraid it would stick to my countertops and everything. And I'm just thinking, oh, I don't want to be in here scrubbing countertops. So I opted to just use parchment paper, which I could have used the countertop and it would have been fine because it wasn't, once it rose and it had the oil on it, it wasn't that sticky. It was a beautiful, pillowy, soft dough. I did knead it for a few minutes and then I went ahead and just divided it in half. Even though I didn't have 2 loaf pans, I had one, and I knew that I would be making 1 loaf and one something else, which I said turned out to be that braided thing. So here's the deal with the braided bread. It was pretty. I mean, it was not professional. It was a little bit uneven. I don't typically braid bread, so I don't actually even braid hair. But I gave it my best shot, and it wasn't terrible. But the bottom of it overcooked before the rest of the bread got to temperature. I don't know if it was my pan that I was using. I put both of these loaves of bread on the same rack in the oven. So I don't know why this one cooked the way it did and the other one did not burn on the bottom. I don't know if it was a type of pan or what it was, but anyway, I won't do that again. I purchased another loaf pan at Walmart the other day, so I can make this again and it'll just make 2 loaves. I am also not a baker. I don't really know how you're supposed to shape the loaf, so you will see at the end when my bread comes out of the oven, it's slightly misshapen. I don't know how to fix that. I did the best I could. The recipe also says that you should top the loaves of bread with melted butter, which I did do, and it browned up beautifully. It didn't need an egg wash or anything. The butter did a fantastic job. So here is where I am making the braids. I just rolled out like 3 snakes of dough, and then I pinched the ends of them together, and then I braided them, and I pinched the other ends together and just kind of folded them under a little bit. And it was super cute. Like I said, I've never done that before. I would totally do it again. But for whatever reason, the bottom of it just overcooked. I don't know why that happened. It was the same temperature as the other bread. The top of it was not overcooked or anything like that. So if you guys have any answers for that, let me know down below. I am no baker. I typically don't do things that require precise measurements, but I'm kind of getting into it and enjoying it because everything's so expensive. This is one place I can save some money by making it at home, and we get an array of different breads. While we do eat a lot of sandwiches, We also eat a lot of wraps instead. It doesn't have to be regular bread. And I always have tortillas on hand, which I could also make from scratch if I really wanted to. I have actually done that before on my channel, and they are actually much better when you make them from scratch. But here I am braiding. It took me a second to remember how to braid because, like I said, I don't even braid hair. I have little boys. I don't have any daughters, and my hair is really not long enough to braid, so it's just not something that I have to do in life. Anyway, there's the braid. And, I think it was pretty good considering that I've never really done that before. It is a little bit off. It's not perfectly straight and even, which I thought was okay. But once you bake it and it kind of expands, you'll see what it did. It kind of like blew up and got super lopsided, but it was still, it still tasted great. I just had to take the bottom part off because I felt like it was overcooked. Anyway, you'll see me now brushing that melted butter on top of these, and I made sure and got it all down the sides. And when my loaf of bread cooked, it got all wonky and changed shapes and did all kinds of things. Again, I don't know, but it tasted fantastic. When you slice it up, it looks like a t-shirt on your plate. Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. So now I'm sharing it with you. So when you see the dinner plate photo, I'm sure you'll see it too. And you cannot unsee it. Haha. But anyway, I just baked this according to the directions. And like I said, I'll link that below. It doesn't take any special ingredients. It's stuff most of us already have. The final thing I'm making is some homemade black-eyed peas. I just soaked these for a couple of hours in warm water. Then I added in some chopped up salt pork because I had it in my freezer, some onion and some garlic powder. I do not salt these. I salt them right before serving them because if you salt them now, it makes them super tough. Sometimes they don't cook all the way through. You just want to wait. So I added my water to just cover the beans, and I just let these guys boil for a couple of hours, and boom, they were delicious. And there's dinner. It is amazing. The bread wasn't looking as t-shirt like in that plate, but you'll see it in a little bit. All right, on to another night. We're going to have breakfast hash. This was the winner for me. I loved this. And I'm not typically like a huge fan of breakfast hash, but this was so, so good. I have actually had like a breakfast burrito made with brisket before. The place, what is it called? I think it's like Stripes. It's a gas station. And they have a Laredo taco company inside. And they make brisket and egg burritos there at their little taco place. And they're really, really good. So I know brisket and eggs pair beautifully. I'm kind of just using ingredients that I have. So that is a couple of small potatoes that I peeled and diced. And then I'm adding some garlic powder and onion powder and some salt and some pepper. Potatoes are super bland, so make sure you season them really, really well. They will soak up all that flavor and probably still need more because, like I said, they're just kind of bland. But they really are like a great canvas because you can do almost anything with them and they'll just absorb all that beautiful flavor. So I also had on hand a poblano pepper, which I had already diced and had ready to go. It was hanging out in my fridge and I didn't feel like making salsa and I didn't want it to go bad. So I just went ahead and diced it up and I'm going to add it into this. And I think it was a beautiful touch. Jalapeno would also work, or bell peppers. Really, you can put whatever vegetables you want in here. So I just put some oil in the bottom of the pan and let the potatoes get almost done to where they're like getting some color and they're soft, but they're not quite finished frying. Probably have about 10 minutes left. And then I added in that poblano pepper. We're going to cook that for probably about 10 minutes until the pepper's done. It's like not super mushy, but it's definitely cooked. If you like your potatoes done differently, some people don't like them fried as much as we do. We don't like them soft and mushy. We kind of like them to have like some texture and some crispness to them and everything. You could always have them softer. You could always cook them whichever way you want. This is just how we like to eat them. So then to all of that, once the peppers were done, I added in some chopped up brisket and I just cooked it until that was heated all the way through, which did not take very long at all. Probably just a couple of minutes. And of course the brisket flavor, because there's a lot of fat and stuff in brisket. And no matter how much you try, you're always going to have some in there. So as it cooked and that fat rendered a little bit out, it soaked into the potatoes and just gave it this really phenomenal flavor. It was so, so, so good. Next time I have leftover brisket, this is definitely going on the meal plan. I may change it up depending on what I have in my fridge, what kind of veggies or whatever. But this was just absolutely amazing. We loved it. So off to the side, I am cooking some fried eggs to go on top of this because I just think it pairs really well with fried eggs. And I also have green onions. Golly, I couldn't remember what they were called. Green onions. I had some in my fridge, so I just, chopped them up. And I'm going to add those over the top as well because they're just going to pair beautifully with this. And they did. And they brought like a little freshness because they're not cooked and some color to the dish and things like that. And then I just served it with a piece of my t-shirt bread and some grapes. I had those cotton candy grapes in the fridge. I had managed to not eat all of them by this point, but they were gone after this meal. So I just served some fresh fruit. I think fresh fruit is always a beautiful side to any dinner, but especially if you're doing like a breakfast for dinner. It's really, really delicious. See that t-shirt bread? It looks like a t-shirt. So there's my grapes. So, so good. Egg on top. And I sprinkled a little bit of cheese. So now we're going to make this easy, what I'm going to call Cowboy Chili. I'm just winging it with this one, guys. I had some brisket. I added a can of drained black beans. I added a diced onion. I added a can of Rotel. I'm adding in half a can of corn. My son Jensen ate the other half because he just adores corn. And I'm also going to add in some tomato sauce. And we're going to add in just a little bit of seasoning, things I think will make it like chili-like. Oh, and some green chilies, man. Green chilies are life. They are so delicious. If you guys are not adding green chilies to random things, get on the bandwagon. They're fantastic. They taste great in eggs too, by the way. I did have a couple of tablespoons of barbecue sauce left over from Dickie's the other day. You know, we had to go get the brisket. Anyway, I tossed in like 2 tablespoons of barbecue sauce and let it cook all day long with some chili powder, salt, pepper, and cumin. And then I served it over Fritos like a chili pie, and it was awesome. So let's talk Supersonic breakfast burritos. Do you guys eat at Sonic? I go back and forth where some days I'm like a huge Sonic fan, and other times I'm like, oh, I don't ever want to eat there again. My oldest son, Xander, and I both have one thing we always agree on, though. We love the Supersonic breakfast burritos. So they have 2 kinds of, like, not just your regular breakfast burritos. One of them has, like, a Southwest cheese and all this stuff on it. It's got extra meats. Then the Supersonic has diced up tomatoes and onions and jalapenos, and it's so delicious. So I'm going to make that. I have everything for it in the fridge except for the sausage that I had to buy at the grocery store because my sausage was completely frozen. So I just started off by cooking that in my skillet and just kind of breaking it up. This obviously takes the longest portion of the cook time here is the sausage. So while that's doing its thing in a skillet, I did take some tater tots from my fridge and just nuked them in the microwave so they were soft. And now I'm going to add them in there. And with my meat masher, I'm going to break those guys right up. Just mash them apart. They're still a little bit frozen, but not bad. They'll just like come apart and mix in great with the sausage. But I will tell you, as I was, stirring this around and breaking those up, I kept thinking to myself, I don't think that's enough potato. As far as the sausage goes, the ratio needs to be a little more even. I did end up putting a few more tater tots in there. I don't remember if I showed that or if I accidentally cut that part out, but I definitely added some more tater tots. I just felt like it needed more potato. This is one meal where you can take like a pound of sausage and some frozen potatoes, your choice, whatever kind, fresh if you feel like dealing with that and cooking them a little bit extra, but I think the tater tots taste better personally. And then the stuff that's in your fridge, and you can make this stuff stretch pretty far when you add the eggs in there. So you can actually feed a lot of people with this. I made this and we had it for dinner one night, breakfast the next day, and then my son's been eating it since then. I did add half of an onion in here. It's just a regular onion. I just diced it up, not, super small or anything, because the Sonic one has like huge chunks of stuff in it. So I made sure that these are pretty good sized chunks too, because we like what they serve. I also am dicing up a tomato, just one tomato. I don't add too much of that. Do make sure that you seed it because you don't want it to be like super wet when you throw it in here. It'll just kind of like make everything soggy, and that's not what we're going for. I am going to scramble some eggs, but I'm doing that in a separate pan. I know some people like more eggs and less eggs when it comes to mixing it in with some kind of hash like this. So I'm just going to cook those separately and let everybody decide how many eggs they want. There's me adding those extra tater tots. Yeah, it wasn't enough potato. I mean, I just kept thinking to myself, it's just the ratio's off. I felt like it was off, so I added some more. To this, I'm also going to add some, I added the tomato. Oh, the jalapenos. Sonic doesn't use like fresh diced jalapenos. They use the pickled jalapenos, and maybe that's what makes it so good. I love those things. So I just pulled some out of my fridge, and I didn't even chop them up. I just like made sure that they were a little bit drained and tossed them in here. Now on that, you can add as little or as much as you want. As you can see, we obviously like jalapenos a lot in this house. So I added a bunch, These aren't super spicy, though. I mean, I kind of get the medium ones, so they're not bad. I also added in those real bacon crumbles. And, of course, I added some cheese to mine, not to my son's. I added my eggs, and I rolled it up, and I had a super fantastic copycat of a Supersonic breakfast burrito. It was really, really good. You guys have to try this one. It's delicious.
All right, guys, that's going to do it with this week's What's for Dinner. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, we definitely loved all of the meals that we had this week. They were so, so delicious. This next week, I am mostly cooking the meal plan that I intended for this past week that did not work out. So be on the lookout for that because I'm looking forward to all the meals I'm going to be making as well. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. It is Monday when you're seeing this. So I hope it is a fantastic week for you all. And I will see you Wednesday with, what am I doing Wednesday? I am working right now on a freezer meal prep video for Wednesday. If you are into freezer meals, make sure you're subscribed and make sure you're following my channel because I'm going to be working on some freezer meals and they're not the same ones you see on everybody's channel. I'm trying to do things just a little bit differently. I'm going to go see a very dear friend of mine soon, and she is a very busy working single mom, so I want to take her some meals just to make her life a little bit easier. So if you're into freezer meals, be back here on Wednesday. I premiere my videos at 7 a.m. Central Time. All right, guys, I will see you soon. Have a good one. Bye.